This presentation is called Freedom of Religion is Not Code for Discrimination. The right of faith-based adoption agencies to place children in homes according to their religious conviction. Please welcome Taylor Oshiro.
Discrimination. The word itself provokes a feeling of injustice. It may bring to your mind images of marches, rallies, even riots. You may think of a Black Lives Matter poster, a transgender bathroom sign, or a colorful rainbow flag. Popular culture preaches to society that all people, no matter their sexual orientation, gender identity, or religion, deserve tolerance from everyone. However, tensions often arise between religious liberties and sexual liberties, as there's a struggle to protect both at the same time. So which is more important? Is one more important than the other? Should one be prioritized over the other? Can they peacefully coexist? We see this tension sharply when faith-based adoption agencies refuse to place children on account of religious beliefs in the homes of homosexual or unmarried heterosexual couples. There are currently 2 federal bills under consideration in opposition to one another regarding the ability of faith-based adoption agencies to deny service due to religious beliefs and convictions. The Child Welfare Provider Inclusion Act prohibits the government from discriminating or taking an adverse action against a child welfare service provider that declines to provide a child welfare service that conflicts with the provider's sincerely held religious beliefs or moral convictions. In opposition to this is the Every Child Deserves a Family Act, which prohibits adoption service entities that receive federal assistance from using the sexual orientation, gender identity, or marital status of a prospective adoptive parent to deny a person the opportunity to become an adoptive parent. There are also state laws called Religious Freedom Restoration Acts that have at their core a mandate that says the religious freedom of individuals can only be limited by the least restrictive means of furthering a compelling government interest. These laws have been met with harsh criticism by many organizations as a license to discriminate, but still stand. The religion clauses in the First Amendment protect against religious discrimination, stating, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." It is generally considered acceptable for religious organizations to receive tax exemptions and to hold true to religious beliefs when hiring employees. But it is no longer acceptable for them to deny services based on those beliefs. The Constitution ensures the ability to publicly and privately practice religion. Within this freedom, there is a tension between what is protected as religious expression and what should be outlawed as discrimination. Distinguishing between invidious discrimination, which ought not be allowed, and rational discrimination, which ought to be allowed, can resolve this conflict. A federal law must be put in place to protect the constitutional right of faith-based adoption agencies who provide a unique social good to place children in homes according to their religious convictions, as they are rationally discriminating, making this a matter of protecting religious liberty. Faith-based organizations exist and operate for specifically religious reasons, which provide them their purpose and influence how they run their business. There are specific advantages that faith-based adoption agencies have that secular ones do not. Faith-based adoption agencies can better attend to the unique and personal needs of each child and parent. They provide counseling for both the prospective parents as well as the child that the government and other agencies do not. Private agencies in general especially help with emotional, practical, and legal complexities. This is why these private agencies are so important. They can spend more time and effort caring for the individuals and their specific needs. These agencies are often faced with a choice when told that they must place children in the homes of homosexual or cohabitating couples. This choice is between violating the law and facing millions of dollars in fines, closing their doors and shutting down completely, or violating their religious convictions. This would violate their religious conviction that marriage is between a man and a woman with the goal of bringing about and raising children. They could not affirm and support the union between a same-sex couple or the lack of union between a heterosexual couple so far as to place a child in their care. And if an agency were to lose its funding, it would either no longer provide many of the services that it does, its work would greatly reduce in quality, or it might have to pass on the expenses in the form of higher fees for the parents. In order to avoid these consequences, a distinction must be made. There is a vast difference between invidious discrimination and rational discrimination. Black's Law Dictionary defines invidious discrimination as granting particular privileges to a certain class of people designated by arbitrary and unreasonable distinctions. Contrary to invidious discrimination, rational discrimination has a clear logical basis. For instance, Republican clubs can require their members, or at least leaders, to be Republican. Sororities can require their members to be female. In other words, Republican clubs can discriminate against Democrats, and sororities can discriminate against males. While some religious views could be harmful and lead to invidious discrimination, the beliefs that prove to hold ground throughout history in secular society, as well as benefit the common good, should be protected whether or not they are of the majority's opinion. These organizations are not invidiously discriminating, since they are not making arbitrary or unreasonable distinctions. There is, in fact, a rational and reasonable distinction that exists between the favored and disfavored classes. It is the nature of their marriage. They are making a distinction in what they believe marriage to be. Traditional marriage is a practice that can be traced throughout history, not just in religious history, but in society's history as well. It is rational discrimination based on deeply rooted and long-practiced religious convictions. These long-practiced religious convictions were even the social norm until just 2 years ago. The effects of allowing this rational discrimination is not to prohibit same-sex couples or cohabitating couples from adopting. Not all institutions have to provide every possible service to every person, but every person can receive any possible service from some institution. These agencies are not invidiously discriminating. Since they are not making arbitrary or unreasonable distinctions. Unfortunately, most people will still see the denial of service in the first place as discrimination. One example of this kind of opposition comes from Alana Samuels, staff writer at The Atlantic, who interviewed Clint McCormick, a foster and adoptive parent who was denied service by a faith-based agency because of his sexual orientation. In the interview, McCormick claimed, "It's just discrimination, plain and simple. I don't feel that the state should applaud them by allowing them to keep state money." Faith-based adoption agencies can see that a same-sex couple may be able to provide a safe and loving home, and some may even choose to place a child in their home. But for the agencies that see the placement of a child as a step of support for same-sex marriage that their religious convictions will not allow them to make, should have those convictions be protected. In Samuel's same interview, Dave Maluknik, a spokesman with the Michigan Catholic Conference, wished to make it clear that they do not invidiously discriminate against homosexual couples, because everyone is deserving of respect and compassion, regardless of their religion or sexual orientation. He said that the church teaches that marriage is between one man and one woman, and its agencies cannot go against that teaching. He went on to describe the consequences of agencies being forced to act against their beliefs. He said, "Nobody wants to see very well-run, professional, top-level agencies that have worked with children for decades close down because there's an intolerance towards the religious teachings. If the government were to deny these agencies funding, they would likely shut down. And it would be a shame for such an important and necessary institution to close down on account of intolerance for their beliefs. If we have the best interest of children in mind, We should want these agencies to stay open as they facilitate the majority of adoptions in many areas. So if we can understand what discrimination truly is and looks like, an unfair treatment of someone based on arbitrary and unreasonable distinctions, then we can more easily protect all people, regardless their race, color, religion, sexual orientation, or gender identity. A federal law must then be put in place to protect the constitutional right of faith-based adoption agencies who provide a unique social good to place children in homes according to their religious convictions, as they are rationally discriminating. Sexual liberty and religious liberty have the potential to live harmoniously with one another. Those who disagree can work alongside each other. The various types of agencies can support each other using their differences to the advantage of parents and children. So we must learn to be different. We must learn to disagree. And we must learn how to disagree. Thank you.